Big Bus Company. We're coming to stop 2 Hyde Park Corner. My name is Lionel. We're now at Hyde Park roundabout. There's some at the front, sir. You didn't need to go down. Do you see? Artillery Memorial by Charles Sergeant Jacket and Lionel Pearson. This was unveiled in 1925. Over 49,000 archway arches to Hyde Park by Desmond Burton. The same architecture designed the Wellington Arch. Here is the Duke of Wellington on the right, slightly coloured by the tree, but he's on horseback on the brown base. And he's looking at Apsley House on the left here, brown building. Apsley House was built by the famous Scottish architect Robert Adam in the 1770s. And in 1817, 2 years after the Battle of Waterloo, Wellington bought this house. And since then, every Duke of Wellington has lived in the building. Today, there's a pink bathroom in the doors of its hotel built for Elizabeth. Now we're coming to the Grosvenor House Hotel. The Grosvenor family. 25 years it was part of Buckingham Palace. In 1851, young Queen Victoria, who was in her 30s, decided to make the palace bigger, so the arch was moved here. Before the arch came, this area was known as Tyburn. Tyburn is a branch of an underground river called the Westbourne. The word Tyburn also had grim associations. Arches in Paris and Rome. 200 years ago, when the arch was built, it was closer to white in appearance. 2 centuries and the population of Mayfair has risen again. In an earlier period, wealthy people in London lived in Leicester Square and Covent Garden, then they moved west. But the movement hasn't continued. Well, Mayfair has stayed as the kind of area. Each Duke of Wellington lived there. In the 1940s, the Wellington family gave the house to the nation. Now most of the building is the Wellington Museum. There's a space upstairs for a flat for the current Duke. And there's the Wellington Arch ahead of us in the centre of the roundabout, with a sculpture at the top by Adrian Jones from 1912. These black metal posts sticking out of the ground are the New Zealand War Memorial. And they're called Southern. Later the street was renamed from a house called Piccadilly House, which was at the other end of the street at Piccadilly. Piccadilly House was built by Robert Baker, a tailor who invented a collar called a Piccadilly. He sold so many of these that he was able to build a large house for himself. So it became a royal palace. We're now passing the Royal Academy in Burlington House. This is a club of leading artists. They have exhibitions there as well. And there are also offices for learning societies. Would anybody like Lord Shaftesbury, Anthony Ashley Cooper, who died in the 1880s? He was a moral and rather prim aristocrat who was concerned about the conditions of the poor in London. Big adverts of Piccadilly Circus. The Samsung at the moment are just being advertised. Today there are about 6 screens with animated adverts. Sometimes the screens combine. But in earlier decades there were fixed adverts here for products like Pepsi Cola, Licorice, chewing gum. And also, if you look at old postcards and photographs, the adverts extend onto other buildings, like the one on the left here, the London Pavilion, where Bodyworks exhibition is taking place. We're going to turn right down. Before the motor car was invented, horses were a key form of transport, and every few streets in London you could buy hay for your horses. One of these was the Haymarket, which sold hay until 1830. There on the left is Theatre Royal from 1820 by John Nash, second oldest working theatre in London. And now we're passing Her Majesty's Theatre on the right, built by Charles Phibbs in 1897.
Westminster is closed today?
Sorry?
Westminster is closed today?
No, the bus, but it's not closed to walkers.
Oh.
He rose through the ranks to become an admiral. At the battle, he worked below decks until late stage, and then he came up on deck and he was hit by a bullet from an enemy boat, and he died on the deck of HMS Victory. And there's the statue of him by Edward Hodges Bailey, which is 5 miles from London to see those sights. Whitehall was the name of a royal palace in the 16th century. It existed with a grey front and a brown side. That's the bank details. So now this street is a political street. We've got government departments here, and we're coming to the old Admiralty building on the right. If you look back at Nelson, he is looking in the direction of the Admiralty. As a good British sailor, even in death, he's looking at the workplace of his employer. If you look ahead to the right now, you'll see a member of the Blues and Roars regiments. You see on duty there, on foot. From 10 o'clock today, there'll be mounted soldiers from that regiment. We're now on the embankment. This was built in the 1860s by Joseph Bazalgette, a civil engineer, as part of a sewer network. Here in the Ministry of Defence Gardens, we've got various war memorials. The Fleet Air Arm, the man with wings there. The Korean War, the man with his head bowed. At the back, the medallion is Iraq and Afghanistan were in World War II. Here on the right is the Metropolitan Police Building, and there's the famous new Scotland Yard sign, which revolves 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. We're coming to stop 8 tour, so don't be surprised if the numbers of the stops have leapt. We've laid this on because we can't go into Parliament Square, but if anybody wants Westminster, they can get off the bus and walk right. Well, please look at that, because there's nothing else you can see. It's covered by scaffolding for 2 years. While the tower's been refurbished. It's built by Augustus Pugin, one of the 2 architects he's had. All the services are on top of each other. Electricity, plumbing for water, gas, IT cables. And the engineers coming to service any one of those sectors has to find their way through the cables and pipes. We're on Westminster Bridge, built in 1862 by Thomas Page in London. It has 32 pods, takes 30 minutes to revolve. If you'd like a ticket for the night, for the views it offers, you can buy one in County Hall at the base. And the only thing is that the queue... Coming to the front of Waterloo Station, please get ready to look right. This is called Northwood the Littleton of the Olivier. The Olivier Theatre is named after Laurence Olivier, who was an actor and director, the first director of the National Theatre. And there's the Royal Festival Hall through the Gallery. That's the only building left from the festival originally in 1951. Here's the Hayward Gallery on the left, and then the Purcell Room. Purcell Room is a concert venue. These are another at Westminster. This is 1,000 years old. And then we look right, we've got the City of London, which is 2,000 years old. London began over there on the right in 1850 when the Romans started building the city. In the centre is St Paul's Cathedral, and on the right, some of the iconic buildings late 18th century onwards by William Chambers, Sir Robert Smirk and other architects. It was built as offices for the government. The Navy's been there, the Tax Office, the Records Office. Today an independent trust manages Somerset House. It's the Church of the Royal Air Force. And on the left is the Royal Courts of Justice. A building from 1882 by George Edmund Street. Can you see the dragon on the base above us now? This is the boundary mark of the City of London. We've entered the City of London, which is the oldest part of London. It's where London began. On the right, the Tudor building with the small windows is the Print Hensham heading current. In the 1970s, if you walked along the pavements here, the pavement would be vibrating, because underneath the street there would be newspaper printing machines turning out issues for the evening or the next day. We're passing the Daily Telegraph building from the 1930s by Thomas Tate, then the Black Glass building by Owen Patterson. Please get ready to look. There was a strong east wind. Many of the roofs were made of thatch, which is straw, and there was a lot of timber around. And all these factors came together to create a conflagration, and over 5 days, most of the city of London was destroyed. Over 13,000 houses, 87 churches, 44 halls of medieval guilds, delivery companies. We're now coming to stop 14. You can get off at this stop to visit St Paul's Cathedral or visit some of the city churches, other parts of the city of London. And as we pass the front, may I ask you to look at the design elements of this cathedral. 2 rows of columns in the classical orders of ancient Greece and Rome. 2 towers and the clock tower on the right, a triangular pediment over the columns, and in the triangle is a sculpture of the conversion of St Paul from the Bible. We're coming alongside the south transept. When we get alongside the pillars, please look up. Can you see a phoenix bird in the triangle there? The phoenix eagle was seen as a good omen for the survival of Britain, particularly in World War II, when the city of London was heavily bombed on the night of 29th of December 1940. Are there any of them? Huge bodies of bronze. The building cost £1,000 million, £1 billion. And now we're coming to Bank Junction. There's a light grey building on the right here, and this is the side of the Mansion House. The City of London here is like a city that was originally built under Elizabeth I in the 16th century as a trade centre, and at one time the stock exchange was in there. Now it's luxury shopping centre. Please look left from the Bank of England, and look at these enormous walls. They're twice the height of London double-decker bus. They're screen walls to protect the bank from rioters by John Soane in the 1780s, a banker by Herbert Baker, 1920s and 1930s. And we're on King William Street. We just passed the Mary Walnut Church on the left by Nicholas to see the monument to the Great Fire of London. And there it is, 202 feet high, by Christopher Wren and Robert Hooke, with a sculpture by Kimmer at the bottom, the man who produced the Phoenix of the Cathedral. And now please look left to see St Magnus and Martyr Church from the 1670s by Christopher Wren. There's a wonderful model of Old London Bridge inside that church. And now from the bridge of 1973, Ibrahim is showing us 3 great sights. On the left, the Tower of London. This was built from the 1070s onwards by William I from 1894. Can I ask you to look either side of the tall towers? Can you see the suspension bridges? And then the roadway lower down. Do you see where the sign is? And the lamp? Look left now, please. You can see right through the building. When that building was built, a ship could come into the building. The stone is covering a steel bridge. And what I would suggest is that this bridge is a state-of-the-art steel frame bridge from the 1880s, disguised to look like an older structure. I talked about the medieval bridge earlier, if you're on the bus, and that was, the buildings were demolished in the 18th century, and they included gatehouses. There are gatehouses on Tower Bridge, which are not very different from the medieval bridge which used to stand a few hundred yards down the river. You can see New London Bridge now, just beyond HMS Belfast. This section of the bridge is a suspension bridge. It's a chain. The blue, white and red structure is a chain. The chain doesn't move. On some suspension bridges the chain does move, but it's rigid here. And now we're between 2 tall towers. If you look up, can you see glass sections of the walkway? There's an exhibition here. People can look down through the glass of the roadway we're on now. Now the way that the Basque Bridge, the roadway is lifted, is that under each of these tall towers, the bridge was open, there was steam power. I'm now going to talk about the Tower of London on the left, and if you look over the trees in the centre, you'll see 4 taller towers with metal tops and weather vanes. They are the White Tower. The White Tower was built by William of Normandy in the 1070s after the Normans won the Battle of Hastings and defeated the Saxons. And there's also displays of armour and so on, so time all that up, and it's expensive, it's nearly £30 to go into the Tower of London. railway station from 2012 by Jacobs and Tony G and Partners is the largest solar-powered railway station in the world. And then Blackfriars Bridge from 1869 by the builder Joseph Cubitt. The Cubitt family are responsible for many buildings in London, including parts of Buckingham Palace. Up on the right, we've got the City of London School. This is the old school, here it is. They've got a new building now. One of the most famous British people went to that school, Daniel Radcliffe, who acted in the Harry Potter film. The hedge is a temple. In the Middle Ages, the Knights Templars of Jerusalem were based here. They were a military order involved in the Crusades, and they've been described as the world's first multinational company. The Pope closed them down in the 1400s, persecuted their leaders. Then the Knights Hospitallers got the land, and they rented it to them. To the right of the London Eye, you can see two towers. One's got a flag on it, the other one is covered in scaffolding. They're the two taller towers of Parliament, and the river bends here. We'll go along the bend and we'll end up near those towers. We're passing under Waterloo Bridge, which was built during World War II in the early 1940s. At that time, most of the men were in the armed services. So the buildings, see the mementos underneath, are from families who have lost people, family members in those terrible wars. And at the front, Burma in World War II. And this is the Metropolitan Police Building, New Scotland Yard. We pass the Eternal Flame, which remembers all the police officers who died on duty. And Ibrahim, my colleague, is taking us now into Stop 18. Now, Stop 18 you can change for the City Cruise if you have a mind. It was renamed Elizabeth Tower in 2012. The bell is not sounding, but the BBC and other people have recordings. Times of the House of Parliament, 1862, by Thomas Page, the engineer, with the help of architect Charles Barry. And we're crossing from the North Bank to the South Bank. Here's this bagpiper, one of the. If you look to the left, you've got St Mary Lambeth Church. This had a long association with Lambeth Palace, the home of the Archbishop of Canterbury, and we're passing the roundabout here, which has appeared in several films. National Lampoon's European Vacation with Chevy Chase. The joke there was that Americans drive on the other side of the road for British drivers. So he was stuck on the roundabout going round and round saying, "Look kids, there's Big Ben." Jackie Chan made a film on this bridge a few months ago. And what filmmakers are supposed to do is inform the council and the local residents. They didn't do that. So when the London bus was blown up, people were ringing the police saying, "There are terrorists at Lambeth Bridge." This is Calais by Millet, and it depicts the scene of hostage taking in the Middle Ages in a war between Britain, England and France. Visit St Stephen's Green on the left. Till a few days ago, this was filled with tents, occupied media crews. In fact, there's a media interview taking place there, possibly with an MP. You know there's been all sorts of exciting events in Parliament, and various TV companies had tents there to keep their journalists dry. We've got Westminster Abbey on the left here, but first, this is George V, the sculpture. He was the grandfather of the present Queen. So Westminster Abbey on the left, designated as a royal abbey in the 11th century. These buildings are from the 1220s onwards. And then on the right, the House of Parliament, you see scaffolding all over. This is called Cromwell Green, this era, after Oliver Cromwell. Now Oliver Cromwell, Charles II, then hanged his body at Tyburn, and the head disappeared. But nevertheless, he's here now, and the Civil War, Parliament won the Civil War, and there were other events later, but it helped to pave the way for what we have today, a constitutional monarchy. There in the square are several statues. Nelson Mandela at the corner, in the far corner, Winston Churchill, Prime Minister in World War II, right-wing political figure, a controversial figure. He's generally regarded as stirring speeches inspired the British people in World War II. This is part of the speech he gave after the fall of France. The whole might and fury of the enemy will soon be turned on us. Hitler knows he will have to break us in this island or lose the war. If we can stand up to him,
All Europe may be free, and the life of the world may move forward.
Let's get off at the next stop, 20, and then you can walk up the road from the left to the right to see the front of the palace. And this time, there, can you see the Victoria Monument there with the gold top? Queen Victoria died in 1901, and there was a long discussion about how to commemorate her. We're not at the stop yet. Could you kindly wait in your seat, please? We're gonna go. And you can see the Buckingham Palace staff working with visitors here. The adult raised £20. Further down on the right, can you see? And stop 1 has blue square next to it. So at stop 1 Green Park, there's a separate bus stop for the blue route. It has a blue dot on the bus stop. So you just need to walk and wait at that bus stop and you'll be able to get a blue bus there. They run about every 10 minutes. Now when we get to Green Park, that's the last stop on the red door, so we go back to the beginning. Stop 1 Green Park. And they'll be break at Green Park for a new drive. At Green Park you can also change to the blue route. There's a separate bus stop. If you look to the left. So we're now coming to Chester Square. Former residents of this square include Margaret Thatcher, who had a home at 73, the former Prime Minister. At 24, in another historical period, Mary Shelley lived. She was the author of Frankenstein. So, Margaret Thatcher, Frankenstein. Is there a joke there, maybe? Does speak really This weekend, we've got Open House Weekend in London. And a few years ago, on Open House Weekend, I entered the building on the right, the Argentinian Embassy. Embassies, other buildings, particularly buildings of architectural merit, open their doors at Open House Weekend. And if you're still here on the weekend, you may like to take advantage of that. It's a free event. You can get a catalogue in a library or online. We're now coming to Duke of Wellington Place, which is better centre, but the overriding theme is the Battle of Waterloo. First, we've got the Australian War Memorial on the right in grey granite, built by Janet Lawrence. And on the inside walls are the names of over 20,000 settlements, which Australian service people came from in Australia itself and also Britain. And as the bus turns, we're coming alongside the Royal Regiment of Artillery Memorial by Charles Sergeant Jagger and Lionel Pearson from 1925. And if you look to the right, there's a screen arch into Hyde Park on the left, again by Decimus Burton. Here's the Duke of Wellington on horseback on the brown base, and he's looking at the brown house, Apsley House. In real life, the Duke of Wellington bought that house in 1817.